All right. So thank you for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Laura Martin, for joining us tonight and talking about toxicity. Of course, at Thermography Clinic NB, this is the month that we're talking about toxicity, toxicity overload, and the impacts to the body and your overall health because of it. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and being so gracious to do so, because I know you're a very busy lady with 2 little boys and a farm to run and a husband. So thank you so much. So before we jump into talking about toxicity, what I'd like to do is get you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, because some people will be just listening to this online and not have had the opportunity to have the introduction. So you want to go ahead and give us a story, a peek into your story?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I've devoted pretty much the last decade of my life to. Like you said, I am a mom of 2 wild and wonderful little boys who are now 9 and 7. We live just outside of Moncton on 80 acres of land now. We have a little hobby farm / homestead. And I used to be a public school teacher. Now I'm a homeschooling mama, and teaching people about wellness and ditching toxins is like my full-time gig. And I love it because it has such a huge impact on so many people. I lived it firsthand myself, and I couldn't keep quiet about it. And so here I am now with the wonderful opportunity to be able to share what I've learned along the way with everybody.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Just letting you know your Wi-Fi is coming up, that your bandwidth is a little bit low. So if we lose you, it's okay. It's all right. If we lose you, just come back in again. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. I mean, because I can go on and on too. You and I could get in a room and we'd be dangerous together, I'm sure, with all the information that we have on toxicity. And I've had my own experience with toxicity as well too. I mean, I have a 26-year-old now and a 20-year-old, but back in the day, I wish I had have known then when they were little to what I know today. And, there was a point in their life when they were probably, between the 8-9 age range where, I really started to dig in and try to understand what was happening, because my son had constant earaches, constant sore throats, sinus infections. My daughter, the same thing. And when you started looking under the hood, you started realizing that all those lovely Christmas scented candles I would buy, and all the different scents that I had in the house, and the laundry soap, and the list went on and on. It was pretty heart-wrenching when I started to really dig in and realize what I was causing in my own house. And then of course, fast forward into the arena that I'm in now, and I actually get to see it in people's bodies as well too, that shows up as inflammation. And that's just a little bit about mine, but do you want to take people through, Laura, kind of what started you down this path? And then we'll, just
Sure.
jump into wherever you want to go with it, because you're so knowledgeable.
Yeah, well, I think that I always tell my King's Landing story, and it's kind of, people go like, what does this have to do with toxins? But it really started and kickstarted my whole journey. So when my husband and I were first married, we made a trip to King's Landing Historical Settlement here in New Brunswick, and we walked into this like little village and stepped back in time, and we realized as we walked into this house where there's like chickens pecking around the yard and a cow out in the field and this wonderful garden, and we walked into this home and this lady was cooking this amazing meal over the fire, it really opened our eyes to how far from our food we had come as society, how easy it was just to go to the grocery store and get your prepackaged things, and how disconnected we were from the reality of the life and the work behind the food. And so when we went back from King's Landing, on the drive home, we talked about it. And we're like, wouldn't it be fun if we just like pretended that we ate the King's Landing people did, like our great-great-grandparents would have done? And so we did it as just this fun, like little experiment, young and foolish that we were. And we're like, if our great-great-grandparents didn't eat it, then we weren't either. So anything that came boxed or prepackaged, we weren't going to do. And we started to feel better once we did this. We had, our skin was starting to clear up. We had a better sex life. We like all of these amazing things that happen. And we're like, okay, there's something with this. So I'm very like type A nerdy, like want to know anyway. So I started to learn about the hidden toxins and preservatives in food. And so this is kind of where it started me down this path and opened my eyes to, okay, if this is in our food, what else am I exposing myself to? And as we decided that we wanted to start a family, I became hyper aware of what I was exposing my body to. So I want to tell you, like, at the time, I was a former varsity athlete, like played sports my whole life. So body washes, body sprays, you know, every type of scented thing that could cover up any sort of stench as I went from practice to class or to labs and things. I did, okay? I always jokingly say things like bleach is the smell of my mother, because that's what she cleaned our whole house with all of the time. And I remember her hands when I was really young, I'd touch her hands and they'd be so rough and raw from using these toxins in our home. And then to add fuel to the fire, I worked at a local store here in Moncton that is, you walk in and it smells wonderful because of all of the big jar candles that were there. So when we built our brand new home, my husband and I had a different jar candle in every single room of my home, playing grown up, thinking that, you know, in the bathroom I had to have fresh linens, and in the kitchen apple harvest, and like I had it everywhere. So I want to say that's where I started from, and how polar opposite I have become since that first journey to King's Landing.
Right. It's so what was your pivotal, like, so I know you jumped into it, and that's kind of like me too. I mean, I remember coming home when a long time ago, I read the book, I'm trying to remember the author. I think it was, last name was Trudeau, I think. He talked about all the toxins in food and stuff. Anyways, I went to Chapters and I had bought this book, and I think I freaked my poor husband at the time out, because I came home and I was like, okay, that's it, right? That's it. I cleaned out the entire cupboards. I cleaned out the fridge. So when I tell people in my post and I say, you know, I know it can be overwhelming, I mean it, because I know I did it to myself. I got so overwhelmed with everything that I learned. And to me, I was thinking, but why wouldn't they tell you that this stuff is so toxic, right? And I was upset, I was angry, and I was like, confused, but more importantly, I was fueled with a passion that no, this had to stop. So I did. I came home and I literally cleaned out my cupboards, my fridge, my pantry, everything, all the cleaning supplies. I mean, I went one foul swoop, Laura, and you know, and then had to start searching that weekend. So that was on a Friday. All day Saturday, I was in town trying to search for all the good foods, all the, you know, right cleaning supplies and things of that nature. And I was really overwhelmed. And I remember getting home that Saturday night and I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, how could I have done this to my kids? And, you know, you feel like a bad parent and all that good stuff. So when I say to people, it's okay, right? One thing at a time. It is overwhelming, and, you know, don't do what I did, because it can be to the point where you just put yourself in so much angst that it's overwhelming.
But I almost think that those shocking moments that really awaken you, and then the more you know, the more that you just have to know. It gets this like hunger in you, and as overwhelming as it is, you still feel like you have to know it, because you've started down this path and there's no turning back, you know. And for some people those shocks can be massive, and for others it's not. You know, for me, I noticed things once I became a mom too. Like I as you learn, you start to implement things. But then as a mom myself, I tried, okay, I'm going to be this hippy dippy mama, I'm going to make all my own things. I did all of that, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to just stick with regular diapers, you know what I mean? Because I was like, okay, I'm going to try everything else, crunchy mama granola that I was, but I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do regular diapers, I'm doing everything else. Well, sure enough, thinking that there wasn't anything wrong with them, you know, that this is what everybody buys, my little guy ended up with a massive chemical burn on his bum. And no matter what brand that we tried, and the guilt that I felt as a mom, you know what I mean? But I couldn't dwell on that guilt. I had to be like, okay, well, what can I do to change it? And what else is there that could potentially harm them? And it becomes this thing where, like you said, you get angered and you get fueled by this passion. And I wish that I had people who could have told me. And so for me, that's my little job. I want to be that person that can help inform people. And I really thank you for giving me this opportunity to help share, because it's so valid. And I know that you've been sharing a lot with your Instagram and your Facebook pages about what toxins are and what's hiding in them. And I think that's got to be a starting point, because once people know, then they can make changes. There's that old concept, when you know better, you do better. Well, that's true. When you know better, you start to do better, but it takes that shock factor to really cause that action to happen. At least it did for me.
Yeah. And I had a client that reached out to me as well too, you know, last week, and she said, Catherine, I'm shocked at some of the things, you know, that you're posting. And she was where I was years ago, right? She was angry. And she said, why are we not told these things, right? So, but again, it goes back to being your own advocate for your health, right? And to your point too, I mean, and once you know, you can't unknow, you can't go back, right? So even though if somebody had read some of the posts or they're listening to us tonight, it's always going to be at the back of their mind, right? When they're buying a chemical cleaning agent or they're going to the mall and they see those nice smelly candles and they're not anything but nice, right? There's just nothing nice about them. And it's interesting because I think once you start the conversation and more people hear about it, then the more they research, right? And I mean, there's PubMed for anybody that's listening, pubmed.org is an incredible place to go and just type in anything. You'll find the medical science behind it and some of the testing that they've also done as well. But the toxic chemicals that we have in our home, and that's where I think most people get overwhelmed. It's like, well, how do you stop all of it? Well, you can't, right? And this, unfortunately, the society in which we live in today, you are surrounded by toxic chemicals, right? It's in our air. You go out of your house. I mean, you can't control all of it, but what you can control is your own little piece, right? And that's where I think tonight you and I can help people to understand, and especially you, because you've really gone from, you started out making all of your own to now, I know that you do a lot of Young Living, which I'm a huge fan of Young Living as well too, based on their practices, based on the fact that it's all plant-based and you can walk onto their farm at any time. And you don't necessarily get that from anywhere else. But, for those people who are just starting out and are learning, what I'd like to do is maybe we'll turn the table around to start talking about, well, what can you do, right? And what is it in your house that you need to look at? Because I know all the nooks and crannies.
Yeah, well, again, that overwhelm starts to happen because if you start with one cupboard or if you look at one ingredient, you realize it's hiding in many, many different things. So I really want to encourage you to anybody who's listening to check out the David Suzuki Foundation. They have a really great, easy website with a ton of information on individual, they call it the dirty dozen of, cosmetics, but it's also household cleaners. They kind of interact. So household care and bodily care are like almost one and the same when it comes to a lot of the ingredients that are used, the preservatives, the fragrances, all of those things. So I think that's a really great starting place. But honestly, what's really scary is basically if you're going to find it on the shelves at any of your local grocery stores or your Walmarts or whatever, then don't buy it. And I know that's really scary because when I first started down this path, I was like, okay, I'm ditching everything, my Mr. Clean, my Ajax, all the things that I used to use. And I was like, I'm going to use the Greenworks, or I'm going to use the Mrs. Myers, or I'm going to use these beautiful things that are like green and clean, right? And the really scary part about this is that I got duped big time by this, is something called greenwashing. And greenwashing is something where companies realize that people want to make better choices and people want to be more environmental, or they want to take care of their health a little bit more. And so they want to capitalize on that. You have to realize that they're in the business of making money, not keeping people healthy, right? So they will market things as being clean, green, unscented, or fragrance free, and I was duped by that. I used to use Clorox Greenworks all of the time. I used the Mrs. Myers. Once I learned more about Clorox Greenworks, it was crazy. And there were a couple of great websites and apps out there that still are okay, but they've since been bought out by those big name corporations that want the money, right? So for example, the Environmental Working Group, they have a site called Skin Deep. And so I used that often when I first started because I would take a look at what bottles I had, not know what the ingredients were, and I type in ingredient into this database and it would tell me if a product was safe or not. And it would break it down on a toxicity scale, which was really great. But like I said, it's since been bought out by big name companies that will, basically bribe them with a ton of money to rank their products as being less toxic than they actually are. So you can't trust it anymore, which is really, really frustrating and angry.
The Environmental Working Group, they've been bought out.
They've been bought out, as well as Think Dirty was another app that was really great, and you can't really trust it anymore. So really, you got to go into other realms of Google pants, gotta use the Google thing and like dangers of this ingredient, but it's a lot of work. It's really labor intensive. And as a young and busy mom, that was crazy for me. So basically I started to say, well, what did they do? Again, go back to King's Landing. How did they clean things back in the olden days? And, how did my great grandmother do things? So I used to DIY all of my own things, but again, it was labor intensive. It was really hard work. It was often expensive buying all the bits and pieces needed to create my own things. I got to the point where I went crazy enough and hippie enough that I even went like no poo, which is the method of like no shampoo, because I learned that like what goes on your body goes in your body, right? Yeah. What you breathe in is going to go into your body too. So I was like, anything that has any sort of smell, I'm not going to use. Anything that isn't a food, I'm not going to use. So I use like baking soda, vinegar, lemon, things that I had in my kitchen cupboards, that those became my cleaning products. But again, finding the ways that really worked, finding the right recipes, all of that was a ton of work. And I'd be happy to share those recipes with anybody if they want them. They can reach out to me after the fact, but there are easier ways, there are cheaper ways. And that's another thing. A lot of people often think that like going clean or going green or plant-based, they think it's expensive. And I always say like, I am the cheapest person on the planet. Like I have to be. I chose to stay at home with my kids. We lived on one income in the suburbs years ago, up until 3 years ago. So changing how you like prioritize and budget in your life is important too as you do it. But there are cheaper ways. It is affordable, let me tell you.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for educating me tonight too on the environmental working group. I had no idea. Yeah. So thank you. And a great reminder about the David Suzuki Foundation too, because I completely forgot about that one, Laura. So thank you, because I know David Suzuki Foundation is fantastic, what they've got out there. So thank you for that reminder, because I completely didn't remember that one. So, so it's interesting. So I know, first of all, let me ask if there's any questions from the audience, because we've got some people on here. So any questions? If you have a question, you can take yourself off mute and ask, or you can plop it into the chat room as well too, if you want. We'll give everybody a minute here. So what we'll do next, so if you do have a question along the way, please feel free. So if someone was to get started, and I want to talk about the Young Living stuff afterwards as well too, and just for everyone that's listening, this isn't a Young Living call, but I'm very passionate about it, and it's helped my life be more easier. I do like to make my own soaps every once in a while when I have time. I'm happy to share that recipe with people as well. I mean, bars of soap with your lavender oils and stuff in it are so awesome, especially when there's lavender being grown in the summertime, and you can do some exfoliating. But also it's saved me a lot of hassle and time going down that road as well. So I want to share that with people, because it's something that I am passionate about and I trust the products. But before we get there, if someone was to start, Laura, what would be the first place? Because remember, you've got cleaning supplies in the kitchen, you've got cleaning supplies for the bathroom, you've got body lotions, you've got shampoos, you've got, right? So if someone was to, because we're all in the same boat, right? We all have to budget. We all have to, which room would you say, or which, I guess, place should they start? Which is the most highly toxic, do you find?
That would be a tough question, but in general, I'm going to say the bathroom, because there's so much more cleaning happening there. We clean not just the space, the physical space, but we clean ourselves while we're in there. So your bathroom is always the really great place to start. And I was just like going back through some of the things that I have learned through the years and some of the notes that I had. And like, if you think about what you do in the run of a bathroom, when you're getting ready in the morning, how many products you're exposing yourselves to from the minute you get up and use the bathroom to showering and brushing your teeth all the way through. They say that the average woman exposes themselves to over 515 chemicals every single day. Yeah. And that to me is like a mind-blowing amount. But when you realize how much is in just one product and how many chemicals are hiding in one product, that's really key. And I know you've shared some of these, but I think it's still important to say, like, The word fragrance, anything that has any sort of synthetic fragrance or perfume or smell, that's like my number one. Please
Yeah.
get rid of it, because it is like this umbrella term that helps hide proprietary information for every single company that makes a product. So yes, they have to disclose what's in their things, but a lot of what they have to disclose is voluntary under that word of fragrance. So 3,000 different chemicals can be hidden under that one word, fragrance or perfume. So ditching that would be number one. So anything in your life that contains that fragrance, which in your bathroom can be many things, from, you know, your deodorant to your perfumes to your shampoos, your body lotions, your face washes. My bathroom and laundry room are combined, so my laundry soaps are in there. Your cleaning products, like that one particular room. But if you had to ditch one thing, anything that says fragrance, please, please, please get rid of it, because it has a huge impact on your health and those in your entire home. So, and even those outside of your home. I used to walk down my neighborhood with my little boys, and the smells that would hit me as I'd walk my dog and my kids, it was awful. And I remember my kids, and it'd be a hot summer day and we'd be playing in the backyard, and they'd come inside and they were like, Mommy, I don't feel good, because they would be smelling these things from just neighbors, their laundries, or their fresh air fresheners that would be blasting through their air conditioning units and things. Like it was amazing to me. So yeah, please get rid of fragrance. Anything that has fragrance, ditch it.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I know that's the first thing I look at when I'm looking at something and says fragrance. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, it's gone. And I'm like you too. I know when I walk in the neighborhood, oof, or I used to, in my corporate world, I used to fly a lot. And I will tell you, I would get sick the night before just thinking about getting on that airplane, because without a shadow of a doubt, there were a multitude of people that used Tide or Gain or the Purex. Tide was the worst for me. As soon as I would step on that plane, I would smell it and I'd be like, oh dear God, please help me, because I would be so sick by the time I would land, with a sick stomach, headache, sinus congestion, ears burning, lungs burning. And people used to laugh at me, and I'd be like, it's a real thing, right? When you are so sensitive to that. And then what happens though, is that because you're so sensitive to the chemical smells, that is a good key indicator that your endocrine system is overloaded with toxins when you become that sensitive to the smells, right? And I had no idea.
I think one of the biggest things though too is that people who use fragrances all of the time,
they don't
even notice. It's almost like the sensory receptors in your nose or whatever are like completely burned away by the chemicals, that you don't even notice. Because like as I said, I was the queen of fragrance in all aspects of my home. And once you remove them from your life, when you bring that back in, like I can't even walk down like an aisle of the grocery store because of that smell. There's certain stores in the mall I can't handle, because now I realize how poisonous, and I use that word like truly in all seriousness, how poisonous those things are for your body. And what's hard is like, that sounds like you're crazy, and people are like, oh, but how could I live without my Tide? I remember getting hand-me-downs from family members for my boys, and they would use Tide, and I'd wash it, and it would take 7 washings and hanging on my clothesline before that fragrance would dissipate and be gone, before I'd allow it on my kids. And what's crazy is that like that, again, what goes on your body goes in your body. So if you're putting those chemicals out into the world for people to smell, that's one thing, but your body is going to be sucking all that up. And as you've been sharing, and as you see firsthand, that really does damage to your insides and like all aspects of your whole body. And I think that, again, is something that people don't realize, you know, oh, it's just a smell, or, oh, I've used it all my life, or, oh, but like, you're okay until you're not.
Right.
And that is the hard part. You know, I've been preaching this for years, and I really had to get to the point where the people that were closest to me, who just thought that I was I had to just learn to make peace with it and say that they have to come to it in their own time. However, I've recently had some loved ones who were diagnosed with major cancers that are fully and not without a shadow of a doubt linked to the products that they use.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I was like, if only, and then you could get caught up in the if onlys, and you have to realize that no, these are the cards that they were dealt, and I can't change that, and I can't change their choices, but I can help educate others, and maybe, just maybe, they'll start to make changes too.
And I think that's it, right? And there's no judgment. There's absolutely no judgment for anybody that's listening tonight. Please just know, both Laura and I both been in the same situation as all of you, right? I mean, you just don't know. Your life is busy. You've got little ones. You're looking for convenience. I mean, been there, done that. And I still make mistakes when it comes to, choices that I make for food. And then my belly lets me know right away that that wasn't a great choice, right? But it's because we evolve and we change and we shift. But I say the same thing, Laura, like with thermography, right? Is that it's prevention, right? Disease management is a very different life journey than prevention. And, when people say to me, and I understand, people say, well, I don't have time to exercise. Well, I don't have time to eat healthy because I don't have time at night to cook. It's not that you don't have time. It's that there's old patterns of behavior. And the more you say you don't have time, that is exactly what you get, because that's the energy you're vibrating at, right? Is that you don't have time. But yet when you unfortunately get to the point where you're in disease management, all of a sudden you now have to make time for blood work, doctor's appointments, treatments, the sickness from treatments. The list just goes on and on and on. Whereas if you had made time for the prevention piece, it's probably a lot less time and much more enjoyable, because you can do it with joy and ease versus being in that disease management stage and worrying. And then, the medicines that you're given, that each one has a different, side effect. And, I'm living that right now with my husband, who just had a heart attack a few weeks ago. And, God love him, he's in that disease management stage now. And it's a very scary place to be. And I sat with him, while they were going over all his medications with him. My heart just broke, because it's a whole different ballgame when you step into disease management versus that prevention, right? So, but my heart goes out to you and your family, because you're somebody like me, you want to help people, right? You're passionate about helping people. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that we all have our own journey, and there's no judgment in that journey, because everyone's journey is different. And with pain comes blessings, right? So who are we to judge that somebody else's pain is not a blessing for them or for somebody else that's in their life? So, but we can keep sharing. We can keep sharing. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the known diseases that, are caused by toxins, because, and again, for everybody who's listening, whether you're listening live or you're going to watch this later on, the recording, anything that Laura and I are talking about, you can absolutely get the data to back this up. There's various websites. Like I said, PubMed.org is a great website with lots of, clinical data and peer-reviewed studies on all the things that we're talking about and all the different diseases that are caused by toxic overload. So you want to talk about that, Laura?
Yeah, there's so many, and it's really kind of shocking. So I'm going to start again speaking from my own experience and then what I've learned from there. So I even got notes for you, Catherine, because these are important stats. And I know that you've shared some of these, but I think they pack a good punch. So right now, childhood cancer is the #1 most common disease related death in Canada. Childhood cancers. Okay. So let's keep that in mind as we'll talk about other things. Right now, 50% of men and 33% of women will be diagnosed with some form of cancer in their life. Yeah. That's just a fact. You can't deny it. That being said, 95% of cancers are environmentally induced. Only 5% are genetic.
That's correct.
So that preventative piece that you were talking about is so crucial to know that, like, everybody that you're going to know people who have cancer, and to know that what surrounds them, what they've been exposed to in their life, has a contributing factor to that is massive. There's 196,900 cases of new cancer in Canada in 2015. So that's an old stat. Yeah. Just think of how that has continued to escalate every single year. So this is a real, like, cancer is that big and scary word, but we have to talk about it because it's so prevalent. So again, what we put on our bodies, a lot of those ingredients are known carcinogens. They are known things that link to cancer. And you think, well, how could that even be allowed? How could that even be allowed? But Canada does have some rules and regulations, and those are important. However, they only have rules and regulations for individual ingredients in isolation. But when you're taking that little one from that one product, and then again in another product, and again in another product, and again another product, that's where it converges. And they can't control what you are choosing to put on your body or expose yourself to. So that accumulated effect, that's where you're going to reach issues. And then also they have rules for isolated ingredients, but when you combine this ingredient with this ingredient, that's where the dangerous thing happens, right? So if you're using it in this isolated product, and then a different product that has a different ingredient at the same time, that's where you're going to get this toxic soup. It's like a toxic cocktail that you're putting on and around your body that causes the cancers, the neurotoxins, the endocrine disruption, and hormone issues in your body. Throw a few more stats out there. Infertility rates in Canada are over 20% infertile from 18 to 44. 33% of all pregnancies. So if you do manage to get pregnant, if you're that 80% lucky, 33% of those end in miscarriage. So it is just so heart-wrenching. I'm 36 years old. I have a lot of friends who have had babies, but most of them have had miscarriages. And it is heart-wrenching to watch them go through those things because of, and I'm not saying it's causative thing. It's just, we know that there are some toxins that are related to it, right? So this correlation is there. Just in babies, 287 chemicals in the umbilical cord blood of the average baby that's born.
Like that right there. I had just seen that not long ago as well too. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that right there alone should tell you, right? Everything you're putting into your body, you're feeding that baby. And to know that there's 287 different chemicals in the baby's umbilical cord, it's just astounding.
Yeah. And 180 of those are known carcinogens. So before a baby's even lived like 5 minutes on this planet, it already has those toxins in them. Yeah. Those 95% cancer related, not genetic. And then 217 of those same chemicals, of those 287, are known neurotoxins. So when you think of autism, you think of ADHD, you think of mood and anxiety related issues that are skyrocketing in North America right now, it's truly, truly heart-wrenching. And I used to teach in the public school system, and to think of the amount of children that I had in my class and how many of those children were on individualized education plans because of cognitive issues, learning disabilities and disorders, it was like something has to give, and I truly believe when you think of things like autism, it has to have a correlation with the amount of chemicals that we're exposing ourselves to. It has to. And accumulated effect from generation to generation too, because they're showing those studies of epigenetics and the things that like our grandparents did. Think of you as like, I'm a woman, I didn't have any girls, but my egg that I had that had a girl who had eggs inside of her, that would affect a granddaughter, right? So the things that I do now could have an effect on 2 generations from now, right? So we can't just say it's everything all on us, it's all our fault. Well, no, it's my mom and my grandma before her, right? And I can't blame them for what they did or what they didn't know. Again, you have to give them grace, but I can make changes for the future.
Exactly.
A couple other things that I had written down is that 1 in 12 youth right now in Canada have been, and this was pre-COVID, they have been dispensed mood or anxiety medications, antipsychotic medications. 1 in 12. And that's pre-COVID. And I know that the stats about that have gone up now because of everything that's gone on. But you also think about those children are at home more often because of lockdowns and things. And think of the chemicals they're exposed to in their own homes, right? So they're saying that the toxic chemicals that we use in our homes are worse than smoking. So burning scented candles, having air fresheners, using, fabric softeners and fleecy sheet type of things in your laundry, all of that has a cumulative effect on your body. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's not to scare, but sometimes you have to throw this information out there for people just to see and make those changes. So for me, again, endocrine disruption has to be at the top of my list. Yes, we talk about cancer, but I think cancer is related to so many other things as well. And you talk about hormonal imbalance, you would see it every day at thermography clinic. Like you would, because it's everywhere. And the ingredients that are hidden in those bodily care and household care products, and even our foods, how that affects our hormones. Also, the culture that we live in and the stress and the fear that we live in, that affects our hormones too. How we sleep or don't sleep, how that affects our hormones too. There's so much that, again, is this like cumulative effect that just adds fuel to the fire. And it's shocking.
Yeah, it is. And the more you dig into it, the more shocking it is. And with some of those numbers, right, that you're sharing, those are real numbers, guys, right? Those are real legitimized numbers that are published. And I mean, I know I keep track a lot of the breast cancer stuff, specifically, and or, stomach cancers and things of that nature, because I do see that a lot, like through thermography. I mean, we do not, I will just make that note, we do not identify cancer through thermography, but we see where the hot spots are. And we see where the inflammation is. And when you see people that are consistently, specifically, even the frontal sphenial region, right, the whole sinus region from the nose up. I mean, sometimes most people, when you do a dental cranial thyroid on them, they are red hot, right? And why? It's all the stuff that you're breathing in again as well, right? So, I'm sorry, my brain is going here a different direction, so I'm trying to catch up with it. But endocrine disruption is definitely a big one as well too, and everything impacts each other. And one of the studies I was doing, I had added a medical grade sauna, infrared sauna to the clinic to help people to do detoxing, right? Because that's also very good. Sweating is key if you want to start detoxing with the chemicals that are stored in your body. And I was studying this book by this doctor that she wrote. And when you're talking about the cumulative effect, Laura, that is what's so important. So when you're, maybe in your late teens, early 20s, or, 26, 27, you're like, that's just hogwash. I feel great. And I use cologne and this and that all the time, I feel fine. But what's interesting is it's the cumulative effect that happens. And so then when people become, she was talking about the age range of like 45 to 55, and all of a sudden, all these diseases start to pop up, right? But it's not what you just did recently. It's what you've done all the way along. It's not a cumulative effect. And so we'll take one big culprit as an example, cadmium. My gosh, cadmium is in the majority of our foods and some of the toxic, chemicals that we use. But cadmium takes anywhere from 35 to 40 years before the accumulation gets to the point where then it's overload for the body. And then that's where it starts to show in the body outwardly that it's to that degree, it's to that level where now your body's going to start shutting down because cadmium is so high, right? So, I'm happy to share that book with anybody who wants to read it. It's there's a lot of information there. It's a long read because you have to keep rereading it because there's so much information, but it's quite interesting when you really start to break down every single toxin that's out there and what the cumulative effect has on the overall body. And to your point, the generations, right? It's just amazing, the generations.
The other part that goes along with that is that oftentimes our body gives us hints or ideas along the way that we just ignore because it's common for people to feel that way. It's common for people to have adrenal fatigue. It's common for people to have insomnia. It's common for women to have PMS. It's common for people to have cramps and headaches and mood changes. It's common for people to have anxiety, but it's not normal. No matter what the world is telling you, just because it's becoming more and more common doesn't mean that that's normal for us to have. And that's a really a really common thing that's occurring now is it's becoming more normal for people to do this. No, it's not becoming more normal. It's becoming more common. Keep your mind open to that and watch your wording, your verbiage with that, because those things aren't normal. And we should not have to live with that. Those are our body's way of talking to us and telling us something is wrong. So I lived with that. I had endometriosis and I didn't even know. I just thought it was normal, right? And my mom was diagnosed with it, but she never talked about it. And there's a genetic component to that. So I didn't even know that she had that, and that could be something that I could live with. So I just suffered with it, and I took, a pharmaceutical birth control pills for years before I was sexually active, just to try to help me manage the symptoms of my body yelling at me of all of the hormonal disruption that I was causing because of all of these body sprays and, perfumes and things that I was using in my teens and early 20s. So I think that's really something that we need to, as a culture and society, get more aware of, is the fact that we need to get more in tune with our body and what it's telling us. When we have little aches and pains, when we have the little headache, when we have, the heart palpitation, or if we have a heavy period, or if we have, those aren't normal. Start making changes, start diving in, invest, do that preventative thing that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And thanks for saying that, Laura, too, because that's so important, right? It's listening to our bodies, and we become what we listen to. Right. So if you're listening to the news and you're listening to, the radio all the time, you're listening to whatever it is, be careful what you're listening to, because the same repetitive wording then becomes the norm. And to your point, exactly, it is not normal for your body to feel these things. I'm 50 years old now, and I feel better now than I did when I was in my late 30s, early 40s. Hands down, right? I get out of bed in the morning and my feet hit that floor and I'm going. I don't, unless I, like last week, did something when I was exercising that I hurt myself, but that's okay. We won't talk about the stability ball. but for the most part, 99% of the time I'm up and I'm going, and I'm doing things that most people, my age say, oh my gosh, like, how are you doing that? Like, I get out of bed and I'm aching and I can't, my legs are hurting and my knees are hurting. But I think it has a lot, I know it has a lot to do with your lifestyle, and it has a lot to do with the changes that you make. Now, I wasn't always like that, right? But again, be aware of what you're listening to. Your body is responding to everything that you are taking in, and it's not normal. And I have people that come to my clinic all the time for a scan because they've come from their doctors, and this is nothing against any of the doctors. I understand where they're from as well too. But when you say things to people like, oh, get used to it, it's your age, or suck it up, you're 60, this is what's going to start happening, or yes, you can expect this to start happening because it's old age, I call hogwash on that because of the amount of studies that I've done. I know that that is not true. And I have a client who is 91 years old, and she is in better shape than most of us. And, she shared her story with me. When she was 56, she was so sick, and she had a bag full of pills. And she said, most days I just wanted God to take me home, because she said, what did I have to live for? I was sick. I didn't feel like getting off the couch. I went from the bed to the couch. I had people feeding me because she felt so sick. And then she said one day she woke up and she just decided that it was either, God was not taking her home like she was asking. So therefore she needed to suck it up and do something different. But obviously, right, she got triggered to say, okay, enough is enough. And she's never looked back. And now she's 91 years old. She gets on the rebounder every single day. She tells me about how that rebounder saved her life, right? To get her exercising, her lymphatics going and detoxing. And 91 years old and does not take a pill. And she's got more muscle on her. And you go to hug her and it's like, wow, she is solid, right? And she's vibrant. She's her mind is very good, and she never stops going, right? So again, when people say things to you like get used to it, or they try to, in my opinion, anyways, this is my opinion, I'm not a doctor, but even try to give you a diagnosis of something or a timeline, you've got to go inside and you've got to be the one to decide what it is, because nobody else knows you better than you. And to believe everything that you're told, it's question it. It's you got to know what your truth is. And just be careful what you're listening to, because that all has vibration as well too. And fear, and I won't get on my soapbox here, but fear is a very, very powerful manipulation tool. And fear can cause a lot of illness and sickness, because we talk about stress, but stress is, and I've heard this from a lot of different doctors that I follow, stress is just fear. That's what it is. It's masked as fear, right? So getting in tune with our bodies mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually is probably one of the best things that we can do for ourselves.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that people often will come to me and they want like a one size fits all thing. Is there like, because we talk about Young Living, we talk about essential oils, and I talk about them all the time. There's not an oil you can just pour on and fix it. It's not a Band-Aid solution. That's not how this type of thing works. And I always say it has to be lifestyle changes. Now, you don't have to be as crazy as me and like leave everything behind and move out to the country like I did. But there are small little things that you can do that do make significant changes in your life. Like simply, like for example, in February, I was spending way too much time listening to the bombardment of fear that is our culture right now. And I had my very first anxiety attack, and I thought I was having a heart attack at the age of 36, and I panicked and I didn't know what was going on. And, I live a pretty like low key life here. How could I be that stressed? And so I made the choice right then and there to just turn it off. Turn it off. I can't change it anyway. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen in the world around me, but I can control me, and I can control what comes into my home and my land and my life. And I've been a happier person because of it. I've been a healthier person because of it. I've been a better mom because of it. And I think that's the thing. So yes, you can have control, and diving into like vibrational frequencies of everything. That's a whole other topic. That's wonderful and amazing. And can really be life-changing too. So if you're interested in that, let's have a side chat.
Yeah, we'll definitely have another chat on that too, because I'm very big in that too. So it's incredible when you start to see that. So we've got 10 minutes left. So I want to just make sure that anybody that's on, if you want to ask a question, feel free to jump in, put it in the chat room, and we will get to it. But the last 10 minutes, I do want to talk about what, both you and I use in our household as well too. You more so than me, because you understand it so much better. I know my key products that I use. But do you want to talk to people about Young Living if they decide that they, or just talk to them about what you use? And because again, anybody who's listening, I really encourage you to follow Laura. Laura, the channel is I Crave a Simple Life, right? So on Facebook and Instagram, it's I Crave a Simple Life. And Laura has such a wealth of information. She makes it easy to understand. She's always sharing amazing tips, tricks, and stuff from her heart that absolutely shifts your day. So I encourage you to follow her. So with that, I'm going to pass over to you, Laura. Let's talk about Young Living a little bit.
Yeah. So a lot of people get worried about Young Living, and I just want to answer those myths right off the bat. A lot of people have a lot of blockages when it comes to like multi-level marketing and what all that is. And I was one of them. I got introduced to Young Living 9 years ago. So I've been with this for a long time, and I swore I would never do the business side of things. I didn't want to be a part of one of those, there's a lot of negativity around multi-level marketing. They're not all created equal. And I really truly say that because I was blindsided in a good way by what Young Living had to offer. So first and foremost, the products, as try as I may, when I started to look into what Young Living had to offer, there was none that compared. And again, I was that type A control freak mom. I was looking into options for my baby at the time, not for me, but for my baby. And there was nothing that came close. So that Young Living has something called a seed to seal commitment. And that was the thing that was second to none. Nobody else could compare. Their transparency, their science behind it, their control from what the seed is to where that's planted, to how that's harvested, to how it's distilled, the whole thing that comes along with what essential oils are and natural things are, was mind blowing. So anyways, I can give you more information on that outside of this, but Young Living in and of itself made it really easy. When I first joined the Young Living 9 years ago, not doing the business, just using the products, they did not even have more than just essential oils and a few nutritional supplements. So they have come a very long way since then.
Yes.
I had to DIY all of my own household products and bodily care products because they did not have it. But as time has gone by and they have grown, so has their product line. And remember what I said, I used to want to do plant-based things, but I found it expensive and I found it time consuming. And Young Living has made an easy button for all of us now, because I have yet to find any products when it comes to household cleaning that are cheaper, that are safer, and are as effective. And I always put that challenge, and I've never had somebody come back to me and say, well, this works better or this is cheaper, because it's not. I can clean my whole house with one cleaner from Young Living. It does it all. It truly is all purpose. And it costs me less than 73 cents per bottle. So how do you, like a regular, like 16-ounce spray bottle. So good luck finding something that's cheaper than that. So people come at me like it's too expensive, and I call hogwash on them because it's not. It's just learning how to use the products. One of the things that I love as like an environmental hippie, like I said, is that Young Living, they do not sell you water. They give you things concentrated amounts because they want to minimize the footprint that it takes to transport stuff. So when you get one cleaning bottle that literally is worth 30 16-ounce spray bottles because it's a concentrated cleaner, that makes life easier. Their hand soaps, everything comes highly concentrated. So you can't look at the like first price tag. You have to look at how it breaks down and how that stretches. So that was a huge thing for me. But knowing that Young Living truly has become a lifestyle company, it's been my one-stop shop. Knowing that I can truly trust it, that it's transparent. You can call them up as not a Young Living member, as just Joe Blow Public, and ask them questions, and they're going to give you your answers to you straight. And if they don't, they will transfer you to another department that will give you the answer straight. That to me is just worth its weight in gold, because anybody who's going to be smarmy and hide things and proprietary information and all that kind of stuff, that's not a company for me. I don't want to have to, in this world of stress, in this world of being so busy, where the glorification of busy is around, I think that we just have to really try to simplify our life. I crave a simple life where I don't have to worry about these things. That's why I built this brand on that, because it just makes life so much easier when you don't have to worry about, is this going to harm my baby? Is this going to hurt my dog that's walking on the floors that I just cleaned? Is this, going to affect my hormones? Like all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because when I first got into Young Living as well too, I was the same way. I didn't want anything to do with the whole MLM thing. I just wanted clean, safe products. Right. And so, I use it obviously in my clinic. This is what I clean with. I clean my whole entire house with that. My clinic is with that. My hand sanitizer is that. My makeup is that. There's not too many products that I don't use that's not Young Living. And, people will say, oh my God, you smell good. What's your perfume? Well, it's not perfume, it's Young Living oils, right? But again, it's the dilution part that people don't understand when they look at the pricing. And again, guys, it's even when Laura and I say the pricing, don't even get scared off of that, because it's really not that at all. When you can get, what did you say, 73 cents a bottle, Laura? I love that you always figure it out right to the T. I love it.
I do, because I'm frugal. I say, I love my oils, but I'm cheap. And I say that all the time, but it's the truth. And like, I am brand loyal now because I've been with this so long that I have seen everybody come at you, and everybody wants to tear people down and see things. But, I have compared every oil. I have tried the different brands, and some I can't even bring in my house, because the minute I crack the bottle, I could just tell, because I'm so sensitive now, that no, that's cut with fragrance. And that's another piece just to know, is that not all oils are created equal. So when you see well-known brands at the mall or other things, the labeling laws in Canada are so bad that you can have literally not even one drop of pure plant-based stuff in a bottle, and the label can say 100% pure. So you can't trust that. Again, it's the whole greenwashing kind of concept. You can't trust that. You can't trust, that government laws are going to protect you. You have to really dive in and do the background research behind how things are processed. So,
one of the things, and I'll just jump in on this though, just for people too, because when you're talking about, and that's so good, Laura, you brought that up, right? Not all oils are created equal. So a couple of years back, of course, I'm a researcher and I don't like taking just what people tell me for face value. I've got to do my own research, right? So I remember back a few years, the place at the mall that sells the oils and stuff. And there was somebody had made mention that they had called a few of the top oil brands to see if they could go to their farms. And there was a post and they said, here's all the farms that said no, because of whatever reason. So I thought, well, I wonder if that's the truth. So I called them all. I called every single one of them. And it was really interesting to me that, when you called, you got oh, you want to visit our farms? Oh, no, like we have third-party farms like all over the world. Like, no, you can't. Like, you can't visit those farms. Or it would be things like, oh, well, no, we don't have the farms, like we outsource, right? So it was so interesting to me that when I called, I got the whole hesitation of, oh, yeah, no. And then when you call Young Living, they're like, oh, sure, you don't even need an appointment. Just when you're here or you're by one of our farms, just stop by and, someone will come take you in. I was so shocked by that, Laura. I was like, oh, I didn't even need to like make an appointment. You can just show up and somebody will let you go out onto the farm. I mean, obviously with rules, because you can't destroy the plants and stuff, but you can go at your own pace. Nobody else is going to be with you to try to keep you away from different areas of the farm. So for me, that was kind of one of the defining moments for me too. It's like, okay, you know what, this is pretty cool that out of all of these places I've called, Young Living is the only one that has their own farms and that you can actually go and visit them too. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Another piece that I'll just piggyback on that for a second is that people get worried because they don't say organic on the label. And if it doesn't say organic, then it can't be good. The reality is that organic laws differ from country to country. And Canada can't grow frankincense trees. We can't grow things here. And so what happens is you can't expect the organic label in, a different country to be held at the same standard as organic to the States or organic here. And then also here in North America, organic still allows for up to 30% of not organic use and still be able to be considered organic. So Young Living does not go through the process to be organic because they know that you can't because of all of the different places where they have their farms and how things are different around the world, but also their standards are better. So they have one quality standard that all must abide by, whether it be China, whether it be Hawaii, whether it be Ecuador, wherever their things are growing, it's all the same standard no matter where they go across the board. So Young Living's better than organic because their standards are higher.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that too. That's very important. So before we close out, I know that we talked about a lot of information tonight, a lot of topics, Laura. So before I pass it over to you though, for any last minute topics, I just want to share with people, I told you that we were going to do some fun things tonight too. And I've got prizes. So for anybody who's interested, I have a Gary Young book, the hardcover book. So this book is one that's always very sought after when we go to conventions, or we used to go to conventions. It still has the plastic on it. So we're going to do a draw for that, but we're also going to do a draw for, and I've got, I don't know, probably about 25 of these, but it's the Fearless book with Sarah Harnish. And just so everybody knows, this Fearless book it's confidence with essential oils in 2 hours. Okay. So it talks about everything from the cleaning supplies to oils to do it yourself. I mean, the book is just amazing what's in here. But it'll get you a start. And then I'm going to encourage you to please seek out Laura, because this woman knows everything there is to know about the cleaning supplies, whether you decide you want to go do it yourself like she did in the beginning, or you want something simple like Young Living. And again, tonight's not about talking about selling Young Living, guys. I want you to understand that. It's just not. I want Laura on here to talk to you about toxicity and what it looks like in the body, because there are ways that we can reduce our footprint in our own homes. Okay. And she embodies this from the time she wakes up in the morning until the time she goes to bed. And she lives this day in and day out. And there's not a better person that I knew that could speak to you about this. And she'll be there to help you afterwards too, if you so wish to do that. Okay. But this book by Sarah Harnish, Fearless, it was really interesting. I was at a conference one time and Sarah spoke, and she left me in tears because she talked about what happened to her and the toxic overload that happened and the brain bleeds that happened. And her story, I still think about, and I get soul shivers because her story was just incredible. and what she's done to help change her life around as well too, with reducing toxic overload. Okay. So I've got a ton of these. There's probably about 25 of them here. So we'll do some draws on these as well too, and I'll mail them out to everybody. So what we'll do is we'll make a post. I will send this recording out later on tonight onto my Facebook page, but anybody that's on here tonight, if you would be so kind, you can send me a quick chat or an IM at Thermography Clinic NB. Send it to me so I can have your name and your phone number, and I will put you in the draw. For anybody else, I'm going to ask them to leave a comment out on the Facebook page tonight, the Thermography Clinic page and Instagram page. If you attended the session tonight, let me know. And if you want your name entered into the draw. So we'll give everyone until, let's say, Monday at 5 o'clock to get in on this contest, and we'll do some draws and have a little bit of fun. And again, I encourage you to look up Laura on Facebook and Instagram at I Crave a Simple Life. She's a real gem. All right, Miss Laura, anything that you wanted to finish with?
I think the last word would be start with baby steps. It doesn't have to be all consuming, although for many people it may be. Start with one thing, make one change, and then that becomes a habit, and then it does become so much work, and then you can add one more thing, and it, again, the cumulative effects that we talked about, they can be a positive thing too. If you add one thing at a time and you change one thing at a time, then it becomes easy. And so don't feel overwhelmed. That's my biggest thing. And if you do, then reach out, because I don't care about the money. I don't care about the business. I care about making changes in your home for you and your family. And that has to be the priority, because again, that energetic thing, we're all in this together. We truly are. And so reach out, don't be shy. I love this. I love chatting about all things health and wellness and toxin-free living. If you want recipes for DIY cleaners, anything like that, reach out and I will gladly share them with you all.
And Laura means that when she says it, everybody. So I've known Laura for a few years now, and she's pretty amazing. So please reach out. Thank you all for joining tonight. It was very informative, Laura. Thank you so much for all the information that you shared. Thank you for always sharing your passion and your heart with us, though. And thank you for sharing with us, your journey that led you to this. And like I always said before, out of everything that we perceive to be bad, there's always blessings that come out of it. And I thank you for all the work that you do to help all of us to understand, the overload of toxins. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, Catherine.
Thanks everybody for joining.
So 5 o'clock.